So we're here in Lansing, Michigan at the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan. We're about to provide notice to the Supreme Court on behalf of the Newport family for the crimes of deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to deprive rights, kidnapping, and other crimes ascertainable by the evidence on the record. When a state chooses to enact its own alternative legislation and substitutes it for the provisions and guarantees of the United States Constitution, that is an act of sedition. Sedition is defined as the speaking or writing of words, such as law established, in order to cause disaffection of the Constitution to procure its alteration in an other than lawful manner. There is one way to change the Constitution, and that can be found in Article 5, the special amending procedure of the United States Constitution, and that is by an authentic act of the people. It is not by legislative fiat of a state. It's not by judicial fiat of the United States Supreme Court. It must be done by an authentic act of the people. Until it's done, then the provisions and guarantees of the United States Constitution stands collectively and individually, and it is sacredly obligatory upon all. So we are now going to provide this notice to the state of Michigan because the state of Michigan is choosing to charge by way of information, not by indictment, as required by Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the United States Constitution. When a prosecuting attorney chooses to rely upon the inferior state statute to charge a person by way of information, not by indictment, relying upon the inferior state law to do so, then that is a crime. It's called deprivation of rights under color of law, Title 18, subsection 242, which states, any person who, under the color of any state statute, ordinance, custom, or regulation, deprives any person of any rights secured by the Constitution, commits that crime. This is a per se crime, meaning that we don't have to prove that they intended to breach their obligation. Simply by virtue of the breach, all elements of the crime have been met because their willfulness and their knowledge derives from the promise that they make upon entering into their office. When that prosecuting attorney then hands that incorrect charging instrument off to the judge and asks the judge to hold the person over for an infamous crime without having the proper charging instrument in place, then that judicial officer has the duty and responsibility to ensure the power he exercises is consistent with his authority. If he chooses to exercise his power based upon someone else's abuse of power, then the power he exercises is no power at all, and he has then established a conspiracy to deprive of rights, Title 18, subsection 241. When that judicial officer then hands that order for arrest off to an officer and asks the officer to go out and perform an arrest without having the proper charging instrument in place, that officer also has a duty and responsibility to ensure the power he exercises is consistent with his authority. If he chooses to exercise his power based upon someone else's abuse of power, then he himself has become complicit in the criminal conspiracy due to his negligence. And then the crime of kidnapping has occurred, and it is a federal offense, Title 18, subsection 1201, because the victim is being held for a ransom in the form of bail. So we have a very, very significant event that's occurring all across the state of Michigan, not just here in Michigan, but across the entire country. There are more than 700,000 people currently imprisoned here in America without having an indictment by a grand jury consistent with the procedures or processes codified in the Constitution of the United States. Therefore, their convictions derive from an unconstitutional act committed by agents that are acting in a treasonous manner against the laws of the United States by refusing to recognize and enforce the body of laws that govern this nation. When a person swears an oath with and to fidelity to the United States Constitution and then refuses to recognize or enforce those laws, that is an act of treason. So we must get this addressed, and we must get this addressed immediately. So we're going to provide notice to the top judicial officer of the state of Michigan right now and ask him to please enforce the body of laws to govern the nation. And so that's what we're doing as of this moment. So stand by. Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Are you a clerk of the court?
No.
Oh, is any of your clerks in?
No.
Are you an agent of the
I am.
court? Okay, awesome. Okay,
Yes,
so we have ongoing federal litigation at the United States Supreme Court.
Okay.
This is some evidence. We need to provide notice to the top judicial officer here in the state, just so that they're made aware. Hopefully, we can resolve this without any further litigation. The case is against actually the state of Washington, not the state of Michigan, but unfortunately, Michigan is acting in a similar manner. So when a state chooses to enact its own alternative legislation, substitutes it for the provisions and guarantees of the Constitution, that would be an unconstitutional act. So this is very clear. The evidence, top is the certificate of service directing the judicial agents to the proper manner. Very, very simple, concise, straightforward criminal affidavit on behalf of affected party here within the state of Michigan. Okay. And again, we're not starting a case. There's no filing. This is simply a notice on behalf of the affected party.
Just like, yeah. Thank you.
All it is notice. That's
Okay.
all it is. So hopefully we can get this resolved, and the Supreme Court here, the justices will be able to direct the judicial officers to act in a lawful and constitutional manner. But it's all contained right here.
Okay.
So could I get a name from you by chance?
Sure, Carrie.
Carrie? Okay. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Yes.
Awesome. And what was your title?
Just administrative assistant.
Awesome. Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
God bless. Thank you.
All right.
Service been provided on behalf of the Newport family, state of Michigan, and time now is 10:22. So service been provided to the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan on behalf of the Newport family here in Lansing, Michigan, and we are on to the next location. God bless. Good morning. Moments ago, we provided service on behalf of the Newport family here at the Michigan State Supreme Court. When a state chooses to enact its own alternative legislation and substitute it for the provisions and guarantees of the United States Constitution, that is a seditious act done by a state with no authority to do so. States may not substitute their own alternative legislation for the provisions and guarantees of the United States Constitution because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and provides the overarching requirements for all states to follow. So, when a state enacts its own alternative legislation stating that the prosecuting attorney can charge by way of information, not by indictment, as required by Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the United States Constitution, a seditious act has occurred. When they then order their agents, the prosecuting attorney, to enforce that inferior state law in violation of the United States Constitution, thus depriving persons of the United States located here within the state of Michigan of rights guaranteed to them by the United States of America, then a crime has been committed. It is Title 18, subsection 242, Deprivation of Rights under color of law, which states any person who, under the color of any state statute, ordinance, custom, or regulation, deprives a person of rights secured by the Constitution, commits that crime. When that prosecuting attorney then brings the incorrect charging instrument, thus committing the crime, and then brings it to a judicial officer and asks that judicial officer to hold the person over for the offense without having the proper charging instrument in place, that judge has a duty and responsibility to ensure that the power he exercises is consistent with his authority. If he chooses to exercise his power based upon someone else's abuse of power, then the power he exercises is no power at all, and he has just established a conspiracy to deprive of rights. Title 18, subsection 241, which states, when two or more persons conspire for the purpose of depriving any person of any right secured by the Constitution, commits that crime. This is a per se crime, meaning that we don't have to prove that they intended to breach their obligation. Simply by virtue of the breach, all elements of crime have been met because their willfulness and their knowledge derives from the promise they make, fidelity with and to the Constitution of the United States of America upon entering into their office by oath or affirmation. So when that judge then signs that order establishing the conspiracy and then hands that order for arrest off to an officer, that officer also has a duty and responsibility to ensure its power he exercises is consistent with his authority. If he chooses to exercise his power based upon someone else's abuse of power, then the power he exercises is no power at all, and he is thus implicated with the criminal conspiracy due to his negligence. And the crime of kidnapping has now occurred, and it is a federal offense because the victim is being held over for ransom in the form of bail. We have a very significant situation across this country right now. There are 23 states here in America that is charged, they are charging by way of information, not by indictment, as required by the Constitution of the United States of America. These are states that are acting in direct willful defiance of the United States Constitution and the laws established by the people of the United States. So we challenge the Supreme Court right now to step up, discharge the duties of their office, fulfill the obligations and promises that they made to the people of the state of Michigan, and protect them from crimes being committed against them by agents of the state. If you choose to do nothing, then the Supreme Court, you justices, will become complicit due to your negligence. So we challenge you right now to step up and enforce the laws of the United States against criminals that are committing crimes against the people of the state of Michigan. Thank you so much. God bless.
I paid all my payments, I'm all out of patience, so save all your statements you say from your basement. I stand on the pavement and fight for my people against you dictators. Right. Even if I stand alone, I'd rather be losing this battle than winning while fighting for something that I know is wrong. Known all along, I have a purpose, gotta reach my people. Ain't no common ground on the battlefield that we're standing on. It's a war going on of good and evil. I'm a crusader, screaming my prayers. I'm hoping that God hear my word and find favor. Speaking my truth and my tongue is a razor that open the wounds, lead the devil